taking you live now, and this is to Valcartier, Quebec, where Veterans Affairs Minister Stephen Blaney is making an announcement. We will listen in live.
And to our veterans who are with us today. And I want to also mention the presence of Mr. Sawim and Ms. Baudry from the Native Veterans Association, as well as Mr. Daniel Lafontaine from the Canadian Legion, and the president of the Canadian Legion for Quebec, Mr. Donati, and his wife, Ms. Latulippe. Thank you all for being here today. Thank you, Stéphane Lemieux, as well. He's with Veterans Affairs here in Valcartier and is part of the Personnel Support Unit, and of course is there to serve our veterans. Our veterans and our soldiers, thank you for being here today. As you know, in 2 weeks, well, actually the departures have already been begun for 412 under Mr. Roch-Pelletier, and I was here with a number of elected officials to express our admiration and say good luck to all of those soldiers who will be taking part in that training mission in Afghanistan. So we are with you there, and we're very, very proud of the work you're going to be doing over there. And I'm also very proud to be here today with you for some good news.
I'm extremely pleased to be here today with you veterans in Valcartier as our brave soldiers are leaving for an important mission in Afghanistan to make an important announcement here on behalf of Canada's veterans. And I have good news for veterans as well. Dans la foulée de l'engagement indéfectible de notre gouvernement,
because of our government's commitment to veterans and our desire to ensure that they can make a good transition, we have some good news to announce today. Last May, under the leadership of Peter MacKay, Minister of National Defense, we announced that our government would accept the decision made by the federal court in Manouche versus the Queen. That ruling had consequences for disability benefits over the long term for our veterans, as well as the military compensation system. As you know, we're talking about CCIP, as it's known. Now, following that announcement, I was also with Minister MacKay, and we announced that for our veterans, we would be harmonizing our programs with the ruling and go even beyond that ruling to ensure that all programs within Veterans Affairs Canada would be harmonized based on that important decision. Why? Well, the idea was to ensure there would be a seamless transition between military life and civilian life. And thus, National Defense and Veterans Affairs are closely cooperating in order to rationalize our programs, which are often similar. So it's with that in mind that I'm happy today to announce that Veterans Affairs Canada is moving into action. I am announcing this morning that my department will stop deducting the amount of the disability pension from the amount of the allowance for income loss. We are also going to stop deducting the amount of the disability pension from the support allowance in order to completely harmonize our programs with those of the Canadian Forces based on the historic announcement made by our government.
Veterans Affairs Canada disability pension will no longer be deducted from the earnings loss benefits or the Canadian Forces income support benefits.
These important changes that we're announcing today total some $77 million over the next few years. Those two allowances, the earnings loss allowance and the disability allowance, flow from the new Veterans Charter that was passed in 2006. Since it was adopted, we have always believed that it was a living tree, and therefore we are making the necessary changes now to improve service to our veterans across the country. We did that 1 year ago. That was on October 3rd, when we announced new changes to the Veterans Charter, particularly with respect to those with the most serious injuries and diseases. And today we're going even further than that. As a result, veterans who are receiving one or the other of those two allowances will soon receive a letter explaining that there will be a significant increase in their income. I asked my officials to contact the affected veterans in order to communicate the amount of that increase. Therefore, they will be receiving information about the new calculations and the amount they will receive. Furthermore, we are already preparing to increase those benefits, and within a few weeks, all veterans who are affected by today's announcement will see an increase, a significant increase in their monthly income.
The good news is that many of those increased payments are being made right now. In the coming weeks, all veterans in receipt of these benefits will see this increase reflected on their monthly income.
I also asked my officials to review all veterans' files that had asked for an earnings loss allowance but hadn't received it because their income was too high. With today's changes, some may now be eligible for that. We know that the earnings loss allowance represents 75% of the amount paid, so that ceiling will no longer be considered if other income is included. Also, a number of veterans' files are being reviewed, and these changes show our government's determination to meet the needs of veterans and their families. We are doing everything we can to provide real support to our veterans when they require it, and we will continue to do all we can to make sure that there is continuity and uniformity between the programs put in place by Veterans Affairs and National Defense. I also want to say that I have made another request of my department with respect to the Veterans Disability Pension.
Approving our legislation for the Veterans War allocation.
Our government is working hard to provide quality services and programs to our veterans. And that's the reason why we will also be making changes, legislative changes, to ensure that we are able to harmonize those programs. But most of the announcement today about the earnings loss allowance means that this will come into place in October. As you know, I committed to reducing the paper burden, and veterans are now receiving lump sum payments for the VIP program. They no longer have to submit receipts or wait to receive that money. And last week, we made an announcement which affects veterans that use automatic banking transactions or the Veterans Affairs account, the VAC account. As we were saying, now veterans can register online and use secure transactions to update their files or to submit requests or applications and follow that up in real time on our website, as well as receiving any replies online. So now it will be easier and faster to consult the website rather than waiting for mail. Now, the deduction for the independence program, the simplification of expenses related to medical fees or transportation fees, and the electronization, if I can use that term, or an electronic means of carrying out transactions, are different ways of decreasing the paper burden for veterans.
It is a fundamental piece of our ongoing efforts to make more services available electronically and to continue to improve the availability of the department to veterans online.
In conclusion, I would just like to reiterate that our government will provide unwavering support to our Canadian and Quebec veterans. Our government is committed to providing you with the highest possible quality of services and programs. And I want to thank all those people from the veterans community for being here today. And I want you to know that it is a privilege for me to serve as Minister of Veterans Affairs. Thank you very much. Mr. Blaney, I'd like to know why it took so much time. Back in 2003, there was recognition that there were some problems and that there was a need for more support for veterans. I guess it needed a class action to make your government jump into action. But people did know for a long time there was an issue. Well, Mr. McKay was very clear in last May. He said it was important for our government to ensure that there was a solid legal foundation before taking action. That's why we needed to test the validity of this legally. But as you know, the government would have been able to challenge that in the Superior Court. That is not what we decided to do. We decided instead to move forward, and that's why the negotiator has been appointed by Minister McKay, and he is now looking at how that measure will apply retroactively. What the fact is, you needed a class action suit to change your mind. This affected some 6,500 veterans. They had to launch a class action suit in order to change the government's approach and decision in this area. Well, as I said, we wanted to ensure or to know what the legal consequences would be, because that kind of ruling can have an impact not only on the Canadian forces but other parts of the public service and even the private sector. And that's why it's important for the government to ensure that it has a solid legal foundation before acting. Now, our government took the decision not to challenge that and not to penalize veterans. But also as a government, we made the decision to go even further than what the court was requiring. And today's announcement, in a way, flows from that determination to harmonize all of our programs. But ultimately, this was a case of free consent because there was no obligation to do that. And as I say, our government was committed to harmonizing the system, and we're moving forward. Minister McKay has been very clear on that. So there will be no possibility of retroactivity for veterans. Yes, there will be that possibility of retroactivity. And that is the reason why Minister McKay has appointed a negotiator, Mr. Tube, from the University of British Columbia, and we will be following with great interest his recommendations. That's the 77 million. Well, the ruling has to do with the program known as the RAM. And this morning's announcement is somewhat different. It wasn't directly addressed in the ruling. So these measures will come into place immediately. Thank you, TVA. My question is along the same lines. Why did you wait so long? Now, as minister, I'm sure you feel strongly about this. Well, we clearly indicated that we agreed and accepted the court decision. However, it's important to realize that there are some national defense programs. There are also programs under Veterans Affairs. And this morning, what I'm announcing is that Veterans Affairs programs that were not affected by the court ruling will be harmonized. Also, those measures are part of a desire to improve services to veterans, because since 2006 we implemented the Veterans Charter, the new Veterans Charter, and there was a certain amount of overlap. So we're harmonizing the programs, and that will mean that for Veterans Affairs programs, starting on October 1st, we're talking about $177 million that will mean that there won't need to be deductions between complementary programs. If there's retroactivity, how far back will it go? Well, right now, Minister McKay has set the date of the end of July for those negotiations under Professor Tube. He is the negotiator, and he's looking at exactly what terms and conditions would be required with respect to retroactivity. So you don't know how many years back it might go? The number of years back that it could go. Well, at this point, though, that's in the hands of the negotiator.
Just wondering if you can tell us why the government has made this move now and not sooner.
Well, I will probably just repeat in English what I just said in French. Well, as I've just explained, We as a government needed to seek clarity to make our fiscal and financial decision on sound judicial basis. That's why we seek clarity, and that's why instead of challenging the decision, we decided that we would not only move forward and accept the decision, but go beyond the decision by making sure that we are harmonizing all our programs, including veterans program, which were not directly involved in the court decision. So basically, we are moving forward, we are moving faster, and as I've just indicated this morning, these decisions are effective for our earnings loss benefit effective October 1st, and I intend to present a legislative bill so that we can move forward with the Veterans War Allowance.
And you're talking about moving forward, but is there any potential for retroactive pay?
Absolutely.
We are listening to Veterans Affairs Minister Stephen Blaney. He is taking questions right now in Valcartier, Quebec, regarding his announcement that the government will no longer claw back disability pay for veterans. So they will stop deducting that disability pension from the earnings loss benefit or the support allowance.